One mic.
Great.
Is that right?
Grapes, that's what I call it, my kids. Give them grapes. That is so big. Where do they sleep? They don't know anything about it.
Thank you.
That's all I got.
Move over one. Yeah. Everyone.
I'm just giving a shout.
Hello, Marie.
I know.
Good evening, everyone,
Good evening.
Good evening.
and welcome to the Broward Delegation meeting. At this time, we're just going to introduce ourselves to get started. With that being said, I am Patricia Williams, your delegation chair.
I'm Jason Pizzo. I'm your vice chair.
Michael Gottlieb representing District 102.
Alicia Robinson, representing House District 104.
Rosalind Osgood, representing Senate District 32.
Marie Woodson, representing District 105.
Daryl Campbell representing District 99.
Hillary Cassell, representing District 101. Robin Bartleman, representing District 103.
Thank you very much. Can we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
play ball.
How about those? Lakers?
That was me.
Oh, play ball.
We have
They got swell.
Do we have anyone here from Florida Atlantic University that would like to come up and give us a welcome?
Or kick us out.
No, not at all. Thank you all so much for coming, and thank you for having this meeting here at Florida Atlantic University. My name is Ryan Britton. I'm the Executive Director of Government Relations. It is great to see everyone. I hope you all had wonderfully successful sessions. I'm here to report that Florida Atlantic had a great session, and thank you all very much for your continued support of us and the higher education system in the state of Florida. For those of you who don't remember, but I was here a little bit earlier when we did the meeting on the front end of session. I spoke mainly about our healthcare agenda. We understand that there are significant healthcare needs throughout South Florida and throughout the state of Florida. And as a result, we tailored our entire legislative agenda around healthcare and the need for healthcare. And so in achieving the success that we did this session, we're able to do three big things. We received the initial tranches of funding to begin the second public college of dentistry in the state of Florida. Right now, there is only one public college of dentistry at the University of Florida. There is dental need, especially in underserved and rural communities. And so we are getting the initial funding to begin that second public college of dentistry, which will be housed at Florida Atlantic. We also received funding to expand our College of Medicine. Right now, we train 64 physicians per year in our College of Medicine. However, again, there's great need. We want to take that number up over 100 physicians per year. We're going to increase enrollment by over 50%. And we received some recurring funding to allow us to do that as well. And finally, nursing. We educate about 10+% of the undergraduate nursing population in the SUS. We educate about 14% of the graduate population of nursing in the SUS. One of the things that you need to do to produce more nurses is educate graduate level nurses. And so we received funding to expand nursing enrollment as well. We have nursing programs that stretch as far south as here in Davie, all the way up to our Jupiter campus, as well as on up to Fort Pierce in the Vero Beach area. And we have nursing throughout, as well as physician placement throughout, and affiliated medical professionals, social work, counseling and other services. So again, it was a tremendous year. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that during the session, we were all also watching basketball, which we were very excited about. And our Final Four run coincided quite nicely. But it really has been a tremendous year for the university. A lot of the success that we had will lead us into our asks for next year because they'll just be continuation. So thank you all again. I wish you wonderful off seasons, and I know we'll be seeing each other before too long.
Ryan, on behalf of the Broward Legislative Delegations, we would like to say thank you for allowing us to use your space today.
It's our pleasure. Thank you all.
Thank you. We have another representative that entered. We would like for her to introduce herself.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Lisa Dunkley, and I represent District 97, which covers Lauderdale, Lauderdale Lakes, Tamarack, North Lauderdale, Sunrise, and a portion of Fort Lauderdale.
Thank you very much. Good evening again, everyone. At this time, we want to do a recap of what happened in the legislative session for us. I will be the last one that will speak, so I'm gonna yield the floor to my vice chair. And from that point, we'll just go around the table and then we'll end up back with me.
Okay. So I have 334 pages of summaries here, if anybody's interested. You're still, here you go, Hillary. This is yours. No, so we are acutely aware that there are a lot of issues that make the headlines and not the nonpartisan or bipartisan efforts behind the scenes that go into a lot of things. We are also acutely aware of the challenges that arise in our communities, sometimes that are longstanding and slow developing, and those that fester quite quickly into emergencies. We've collectively as a body are happy to report a couple things. For the very first time, the Florida legislature has acknowledged this year sea level rise and climate change. It's a very big deal, not to be discounted at all. And I serve as the vice chair of the resiliency committee, where the aim is going to be to rip up, repair, and replace aged infrastructure. So we don't have sanitary sewer backups, we don't have stormwater issues. Representative Lamarca, who I think should be here or is coming, whatever, also led an effort on the restoration of the Osborne Reef as well. So we've broken down, Madam Chair has a number of sections broken down in the category, whether it's education, healthcare, business and economy, culture, rights of citizens, things that track and follow our committee assignments, both in the Senate and in the House. And Ryan, the budget's not signed yet, so it's always a cheap thrill when you see funding until the veto pen comes. I would like to speak not so much even the negative, but just about the reality of the following. There were a number of bills that continue to strip away local authority. And a number of us up here, all of us up here, actually are fierce advocates for local control. We kind of conceptualize things in a bit of a bullseye, that where you live and who you love is the center of your universe. And then as you go outside the bullseye, you have your neighborhood and your association, you have your city officials, your county officials, your state, and then your federals. And coming fresh off teaching a 5th grade class the other day as a guest speaker, everybody knows who the president is, but none of the kids knew who their mayor was. And we continue to, and I say we, and as a collective body, to try to foster some collegiality. But really it's a challenge from the other side of the aisle to go ahead and see a continuing stripping of that local control, because those that are obviously closest govern best. The things that make the headlines are unfortunately really loud distractions to the underlying issues that either the solutions are there and the political will is not there to execute them, or they just don't have the answers. And that's very dangerous. None of the things that made the headlines, either locally, statewide, or nationally, will lower your property insurance. None of them will increase or improve the viability of your neighborhood, unfortunately. We've done some wonderful things in broad strokes as it relates to parks and things of that nature. But you're all incredibly lucky, and I consider myself lucky to be serving with all of the men and women up here because they come from different backgrounds, different life experiences. Doc Osgood and I sit just 8 feet away from each other, and we have a good time as it relates to that. But I want you to hear individually from some of our members and the things they worked on and the challenges they faced. And we did okay, as best that can be expected. But Broward County is sort of the last holdout and bastion of some, not equality, but equity as it relates to the legislature. This is a critically important, this is the epicenter here for the state of Florida for us to actually enjoy and continue with the democracy. Doc?
Thank you, and thank you for that overview. And this was my first legislative session. So I talked to a lot of people on both sides of the aisle. I listened, I shared perspective, and the whole idea of people and personhood was very different for me. I mean, everything we do is political, who get what, when, and why, but politics should not take a priority over people. And when we have legislation that literally calls people illegal aliens, it's a problem. So we have to work really hard to make sure that we understand as elected officials that it's people that elect us to go there and represent them. And once we're elected, even if they didn't vote for us and they live in the district, we have a responsibility to elect them. There was a lot of windfall about a letter that came out that said an AP African American study course has no educational value. That was very insulting to me. I've kind of been Black all my life. And being a former adjunct professor at Nova, we know that all history has educational value because it is that history that we get our empirical evidence of best practices, and we also get our horrible lessons learned that we should never repeat. So some key points, I'm on education K through 12, and I'm sure we'll talk a lot around different things, but one bill that I'm very excited about is CSHB 379, a technology and K through 12 bill that I co-sponsored that's going to prohibit kids from being on social media while they're in school. It causes a lot of bullying. It causes a lot of fighting after school, on the bus. It is just a major problem. Even when you talk to young people who, you know, want their cell phones, but they will tell you a lot of cyberbullying and a lot of mean things happen during school time while they're using social media, even to the extent of how many likes you get. I also like a bipartisan bill that was sponsored by Senator Simon and Representative Benjamin, CSHB 551, an African American Studies Accountability Bill. So the law that was previously on the book requiring school districts to teach African American history, which many of them were not doing it, now they have to not only do it, but they have to report it. They have to report it. Then there was other legislation. I was also the vice chair of community affairs, and we got the Live Local bill, the housing bill passed, and that bill will finally put money into the Sadowski Fund, which had, you know, previously been taken, money just kept being taken away and used for other things. It will provide money for both ship and sell programs to do multifamily development and add extra money to the Hometown Hero program, which gives a good chunk of change for persons that want to become homeowners for the first time. There was horrible legislation around bathrooms in schools with kids. And I want to be real clear. In a school setting, you have kids. You have kids that are male, female, and transgender. So you can't make policies and leave out a whole group of students. They're there, they're not going anywhere. And as an elected official, it's our job to provide a safe environment for them to use the bathroom, to eat, and have a quality education. And we have to continue to work to make sure that whatever we're doing it in a way that it's going to help everybody. And finally, the last thing I would mention that I'm still trying to figure out, this medical conscience bill. And I'm trying to figure it out in a sense of how it's going to look from an implementation perspective. So if I'm of a certain faith and I'm a person of faith, I'm actually a minister in my church, and I have a faith-based belief, just let's say about needles. So as a doctor now, someone can come to me and I can choose not to take their blood or give them a shot because in my faith, I don't think they should use needles. And I'm supposed to let them know in advance. How far in advance? When they're stressed in 911? I mean, I just don't know how the implementation of this conscious, and it's entitled something like protecting from discrimination. You know, in some professions, you're there to serve, you know, and you have your own personal beliefs and biases, but when you sign up for that discipline, you don't get to pick and choose who you provide services for. And I could talk about the harbor immigration bill, but I know my friend Rep. Dunkley is going to do that, so I'll stop there.
Well, you know, it's one of those things that you know, being up there, it's an honor to walk through those halls and walk on the floor and represent the district, but also it's also a fast realization of what happens when you know, when we have a no checks and balances in place. And so what I got to experience up there, you know, we had the social issues, as one of my colleagues has said, that we have now taken a lot of the power from the consumers and given it to the insurance companies. We've seen the tort reform bill, we've seen construction defects bill, which it gives less time for you to even bring up a situation regarding buildings to the bringing up issues to those who have constructed those buildings, bring up suit to that. And so, but at the same time, you know, while we've seen a lot of these terrible don't make sense bills get put through, there were a few things that did come forward in play. One was the HOA homeowners association bill, which now puts up guardrails, allows you to if you have a situation at your within the homeowner association, they bring up a fine to you, now can curate it and get that fixed without having that fine. Another one that was good and is HB 1275, which creates a voluntary disability registry for use for law enforcement agencies. What we've seen is countless people with cognitive disabilities have been killed by police, and this bill aims to allow law enforcement to an avenue for identifying individuals with disabilities. And last but not least is a bill that I got to pass, and for those who may not know, being a freshman and a Democratic freshman at that, it's definitely not the easiest time to try to get a bill passed. But I was able to get a sickle cell bill passed alongside our leader, Fentress Driscoll, which now expands the education, the treatment, and the prevention of individuals with sickle cell disease and sickle cell traits across the state of Florida in the high concentrated areas. As we know, there's a high level of population here in Florida that has sickle cell disease, and more importantly, it affects a lot of Black folks. And so what this bill does now allows for opportunities where these folks can get treatment, relieving our hospitals of that treatment and them going into facilities outside of hospital to get that care that they need when a crisis does occur. And what it does on the back end is now that lifespan goes from 40 to a lot longer because they are getting that care. Families are starting to get that research and that knowledge of how do I help? How do I provide that prevention? And it also allows for a newborn registry to be put into place. So anytime a child is born with the trait or the disease, they are now put into a registry where they can now access that help. And so those are some things that I felt like will be impactful as we continue to move forward and continue to fight the things that we are seeing put through in this legislation.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. I'll talk to you guys a little bit about the silo that I have the fortunate opportunity to sit in. For those of you that don't know my background, I am an attorney. I've had the honor and privilege of representing policyholders against insurance companies for the last 13 out of an 18-year legal career. So my specialty is really property insurance. And you would think as a result of that, maybe I would be in banking and insurance or sitting on judiciary committees, but no, I have the honor of being in the newly created infrastructure silo. And I actually feel very privileged to serve in that silo because it is a priority of Speaker Renner. It is a new silo that's been created where we focus on environmental issues, all of our water issues from scarcity to contamination, making sure that our aquifers are being protected, our water sources are being protected. I sit in agriculture, so I hear about all that we're doing to address our wildlife corridor, making sure that we preserve the most beautiful parts of Florida for generations to come. And it's a really great silo to be in because I do think having the opportunity to serve the district that I serve here in Broward County, which is coastal, and it includes, like I like to say, the heart of Broward's economic infrastructure, from the port to the airport, to all of our big tourist attractions along the coastline, Hard Rock Hotel, and everything in between. We know that if we were to receive a hurricane the size of Hurricane Ian, impact our side of the coast, we'd be in trouble. And so focusing on our infrastructure, on our water quality, on our availability of water has been really eye-opening and insightful. So just to talk to you guys about some of the things that we did in that silo, I want to talk to you specifically about the aspects of the budget. So we passed, yet to be signed, but the largest budget in state history, and a big portion of that is dedicated to our environment. So $850 million is planned for the wildlife corridor. That gives us an opportunity to connect some lands that have been forgotten. So our habitat and our natural species can travel throughout Florida and protect those lands, like I said, for generations to come. We're also spending $382 million on Everglades restoration, $300 million for buying, in addition to the $850, buying up environmentally sensitive lands, whether that's in easements, with the Rural and Family Lands Project, which allows farmers to continue to utilize their land, cultivate it, have their animals, and keep it generational, keep that farm in their family for years to come. Also, while giving an easement to the state of Florida that it can't be developed. There's a lot of red tape in that area when you're trying to buy up land. So some of the things that we worked on was really streamlining that process so we could effectively find the lands that we want to conserve that help protect that wildlife corridor, and making sure at the same time that those families still have the opportunity to keep those farms in their family, keep them as working farms, all while making sure that we preserve that space for Florida for the future. And we spent another $300 million, and there's another projected $300 million to combat sea level rise. So lots of great bills that also came out of that silo, from seagrass restoration to protecting the Indian River Lagoon, some biosolid grant programs to try to find additional sources for renewable energy. Talk to you guys about some specifics, some wins that I had actually today. The governor signed Senate Bill 130, which is otherwise known as Grayson's Law, which I had the honor and privilege of sponsoring in the House. Grayson's Law is really going to overhaul the family law section of the court system. And if you're not familiar with Grayson's story, Grayson is a 4-year-old little boy who was sadly killed in a parent murder-suicide. And this is one of those situations where the mom did everything right. She knew, her intuition was telling her that something was going to happen. She was receiving escalating threats of intimidation from the father of her son. She went to the court. She applied for all of the right things. And sadly, because the court was looking at the four corners of the law, and it didn't allow for the court to consider additional factors such as threats from one parent to another to apply to the child, the court basically said, well, yeah, we're in fear for your life, but we'll leave Grayson with his dad. And Allie's worst fears were realized when Grayson was killed, and we were able to get that bill across the finish line and signed by the governor today. So I'm extremely proud of that. I was also asked to work in bipartisan fashion fixing some insurance issues. We have a new boating safety bill. If you didn't know before, when you come to the state of Florida, you're actually not required to get any type of insurance when you rent a boat. And as a result of that, when there's an accident on the water, oftentimes our boat rental places bear the brunt of that type of litigation. So we created an insurance package for boat rental companies that will ensure that businesses are protected and citizens who come here and renter and tourists that come here have that additional protection. And I was honored to be asked by the sponsor of that bill, a Republican, to assist him in that and making that bill and just getting the bill to a good posture where we had good policy. And I think that's really important for us to do. For those of you that don't know, 81.5% of the bills that passed this legislative session did pass with full bipartisan support, which means less than 5 no votes. And I think that's always important for us to talk about. So everybody knows while we do have those issues that do divide us, 81% of the work that we do is in a bipartisan fashion and working across the aisle so we can just make the best policy that we can for the state of Florida. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to start with the bill that I've been working on for 3 years. That is actually a healthcare expansion bill, the first one since 1998 in the state of Florida. And after 3 years, I need to give a shout out in the room to Robbie Polaroid, who was the legislative liaison for Children's Services Council, and I was on the school board. We started working on it. Megan Trutsky took over and helped me with that. Nick Hessing, my aide, was also part of it. This has been probably like 6 years in the making because I was lobbying for it before. So what we did is, and we're waiting for it to be signed, is we've expanded the eligibility requirement for kid care. It was 200% over the federal poverty level. And so a family would pay $10 to $20 a month for health care for all of their children. And the minute they made a penny over that threshold or took a 50-cent raise, their health care coverage for their children would increase 1,100% to $259 per child. So if you had a child with a chronic disease like diabetes, you weren't going to take that raise. You weren't going to try to flourish and prosper because it was too important to take care of your child's health. So we started our first year as a freshman, made a couple, we put some tiers in the bills. We really didn't know what we were doing, but we had a great bill. The second year, Senator Perry sponsored the bill. We rewrote it. And we really worked with the feds, the Fed Bank out of Atlanta, to identify the fiscal cliff. So in order to mitigate that cliff, we moved it up to 300%. So for the first time ever, the tiers are going to be looked at. They're going to be 2 to 6 tiers. This is going to be enacted January 1st of 2024. And what will happen for these families is that as their income increases, they will slowly move to the edge of that cliff, but they will also be paying more in their premium so that when they finally get to the edge of that cliff, they can sustain healthcare coverage for their children. And it's more important than ever. The local hospital districts around the room have been gathering data for me for the last 3 years of how much they're paying for uninsured children. It's to me the light of this session. I can't say enough about Speaker Renner for supporting this. So that to me is going to be my legacy bill, and I can't believe it happened, and I'm waiting for him to sign it. I get a little scared, but then Speaker Renner did put it in his Mother's Day little graphic, so I'm pretty sure they're signing it if it's in the graphic, but you get scared. Another bill I passed this year was for FRS. So if you're in the FRS program, you can't volunteer your first year or you risk losing your pension. So there's law enforcement who want to go into reserves. First grade teachers I know who want to be the room mom in their kids' classroom, and they're prohibited from doing any of that because they risk losing their pension. So that's clarifying language so that people can be guardian ad litems. And, people who work for the state, they're not doing it for the money. They do it because community service is in their blood. And when they retire, they want to continue those efforts, making the world a better place. So that lets them do that. Another bill dealt with waterway pollution. South Broward Drainage District has an issue where people are polluting, even throwing the bodies of dead animals. You name it, it's in the waterways. So now it will be against the law with a fine, trespassing. So who knew that wasn't covered? It's so weird when you find those things out. And another bill near and dear to my heart is pre-K ESE. that passed. Met a little girl named Anna with Down syndrome. And it basically changes the pupil progression plan so that pre-K, if you're in an ESE pre-K classroom and you don't have the prerequisite skills needed for kindergarten, your parent can now make the best educationally sound decision to keep them back in pre-K and not fear having to be retained an additional time before 4th grade. A lot of these kids switch at 3rd grade to an alternative curriculum. So the children who don't have executive function, communication and speech, some of them go into kindergarten not even potty trained. This gives them an extra year to get those skills. I'm in the health insurance silo. I was in education, but I think I was too feisty. So it doesn't, they kept Felicia, thank God for her. Oh, they took you off too? No educators in education. So imagine that. So a couple of bills I just want to touch on, and I'll let Felicia do the heavy lifting, is one, the voucher bill. It's going to be a serious problem for public education. You can look forward over the next 2 to 3 years, losing 35% of your workforce. Number one. Number two, there's no accountability. Vouchers are different than charter schools. Charter schools have to have curriculum. They have to follow the same stupid book bans and rules that everybody else has to. They also have testing, and they have to have certified and degree teachers. When you take a voucher in the state of Florida, depending on what school you choose, the teacher can be a high school graduate. Usually they prey upon ESE students. Many students, even when I was an assistant principal in Liberty City, they go to the churches, they round up the kids, come get them a K scholarship. I had a kid with occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, language therapy, 7 years old, not toilet trained, and trainably mentally handicapped. And he stayed in that private school long enough for them to get the first FTE count, which was a huge check, upwards of 20,000, their proportionate share of $20,000 a year. And he came back and we were starting at ground zero for that kid. 70% of the kids who choose a voucher come back by the 3rd year. There is no accountability. Now, we passed a pre-K bill last legislative session because it's the same concept. It's a voucher for pre-Ks, and the business chambers and the community said we're not getting the bang for our buck. The kids are not coming in ready for kindergarten. So they put provisions in place to make the schools accountable for the tax dollars. I suspect that will eventually happen. As a school board member, and Dr. Osgood can attest to this, we have kids that go to voucher schools. I've gotten phone calls in my office, and colleges won't accept their high school diplomas because they're not accredited or the coursework they need. So if you want to have vouchers, fine, but you need to have accountability. If you look at what happened in Arizona, it's basically they're using the reserves of the general fund to pay the difference, because now a multimillionaire can get a voucher. So Step Up right now is having serious issues. My phone calls are getting, my messages getting, I'm getting tons of messages and phone calls from parents. They can't get through because all of the very wealthy people who are at the Ransom Everglades are now going to get an $8,000 coupon. So it is a very, very scary thing. And in terms of health insurance, I agree with Dr. Osgood. I fought hard against that medical conscience bill. Look, we spent like 3 or 4 hours on the House floor debating whether financial institutions can have ESG policies because they're a bank and why should they have a conscience? But in this bill, we gave insurance companies a conscience. Every session, we pass at least 5 bills because we know health insurance companies deny coverage. And now health insurance companies have a way out of denying coverage. They're just going to make a statement in their corporate plan to have a conscience on some issues, which is incredibly, incredibly scary and asinine. Abortion, we had for Broward County, this is the last thing I'm going to touch on. For abortion, and I don't care where you were at on abortion, you can be for it or against it, but we had 2 cases that made national news of women with pre-viability pre-prom, which means their water broke at the 16-week, and a woman from Broward County was forced to deliver a dead fetus on a toilet, lose half her blood, was in the hospital for over a month, may not be able to have children now because they would not remove the fetus. So the language is very vague in the bill. It says if it's imminent danger. Well, nobody can define imminent. Doctors are scared to perform anything because they don't want to have a 3rd-degree felony and lose their license. And the lawyers are making the decisions Another woman who had Potter syndrome, the fetus had Potter syndrome, the hospital refused to take the dead fetus out. She carried the dead fetus the whole time in her body without amniotic fluid, which is emotionally and physically painful. So we need to fix that. That will be a goal of my next session. Thank you.
So as a freshman in the legislature, this past session, it was fast, but I'm here, I survived it, right?
Yes.
And I had 6 committees that I served on, all of which was very great. I really learned a lot because having not been in many of these spaces before, I learned a great deal. Health and Human Services, there was always action going on Health and Human Services. Choice and Innovation Subcommittee, the Local Administration and Federal Affairs, Post-Secondary Education and Workforce Subcommittee, Pre-K-12 Appropriation, and Water Quality, which came one of my favorite because I understand we need water for everything. We're surrounded by it and how important it is. And I think my colleague, Rep. Costello spoke so much about it. But yeah, there was so much learning that I garnered in those spaces. And I was grateful to be on those committees and look forward to continue serving and learning in those areas that I was assigned. My cities that I represented, I think we had 11 projects, 9 of which we're waiting to be appropriated to the tune of $3.7 million. So I'm looking forward to that being signed for us. There are a couple of bills that I really was grateful that I was able to co-sponsor. One, because as a veteran, a lot of veteran issues are very near and dear to me. And so we had the dental bill for indigent veterans, where as a veteran, if you don't have 100% service-connected disability, you do not get dental services. And so through this bill, we are going to have veterans who are going to be able to get funds through the grants. They're going to be able to get services to provide them with a better dental care. Also, one of the bills I co-sponsored was the peer specialist program for incarcerated people. Why is that important? I believe is being here in South Florida, a lot of our prisons are filled with our young people from this area, and having an opportunity through the peer specialist to become peer specialists when they come out, to be certified as peer specialists when they come out of prison, that is going to reduce them going back in. And so that's quite important for us to understand, because we have, if we check our numbers, we have quite a bit of our young people that comes back home. And so for me, that was a really important bill to have been part of and co-sponsored. I was grateful to see in the legislature regarding kid care, and I think Brett Bartleman spoke about it as well, the monies that was allocated in kid care to take care of a lot of our kids across the state. And so that was another, as far as the budget, that I really was grateful to see that we put that kind of funding. And then last I'm going to talk about as far as budget is, as a former state employee, I was happy to see that there was a 5% increase for our state employees. We don't do enough. I left the state when there was a 5-year freeze. I left just because of that. There was no increase. So for our budget for our legislature to offer that 5% increase, that was something that I was grateful to see. As a freshman, again, I was happy that I was able to pass a bill along with a Senate sponsor. Again, it's a veteran bill, and it's the Purple Star Collegiate Campus. So campus like FAU can self-identify to become a Purple Star campus, where our veterans, their spouses and their families, their spouses, their kids, and the veteran can come in and know that there is priority given to them on the campuses. So those are some of the things I was really happy about as far as being in the legislature. And I know there are many people out here that supported us. And I just want to say thank you all for your support to us as legislators. Madam Chair.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It's really a pleasure to see so many of you in the room. As you know, I represent District 105, which is parts of Hollywood, Pembroke Pines, Miramar, Hallandale, West Park, and Pembroke Park. This was my second session because I got elected in 2020. And I was blessed to be assigned to be the ranking member actually in the healthcare appropriation silo, which is under the Health and Human Services. And there's such a great need for healthcare. And a big chunk of the budget was appropriated in the Health and Human Services area. And it's a blessing for us to be able to make an impact in that area. Besides everything else that my colleagues has spoken about, we don't want to be redundant, but we have some good news and we also have some bad news. I was able to pass 2 bills this session, one of them that I have worked on for 2 years. It's really House Bill 139, which is really a bill that I was looking at bridging the gap that we are seeing in the healthcare industry and trying to get veterans jobs at the same time. We have a lot of medics, corpsmen who left the armed forces, and then they have the experience, they have acquired the experience in healthcare, and we have a shortage. By 2035, we expected to have a shortage of about 65,000 nurses. So this is something that I was thinking about. How do I find a way to make a dent in that arena? So I'm glad to say that we worked very hard on the bill and we were able to pass this bill. A second bill that I passed also has to do with a law that was in place where state and local officer who died in the line of duty, they were able to get a full ad valorem exemption. The spouses, whether it's the husband or the wife who is a survivor. Well, that law did not apply to our federal law enforcement officers. So my bill had made it possible for the for the FBI agent, the marshals, which are the federal officers, for them to reap the benefit of the same exemption. And I have to say thank you to Marty Kier, the Broward property appraiser in Broward County, one of the finest that we have, who really helped me and provided me with the information that I needed in order to get this bill passed. So they both have gone to the governor. One of them, they included it in the taxation package, and they both on the governor's desk for signature. Now, I want to talk to you about 2 bills. And before going to the 2 bills that I want to touch on, I was able to also bring some funding for the district. I have $4.5 million in the budget for different projects that was given to me by my district. And also one of the bills that I passed, there are $2 million attached to that bill. So the 2 bills that I want to talk to you about, besides everything else that my colleagues have spoken about, is the election bills. It is so critical for us to educate everyone in our state of Florida, how important it is for them to make sure that they are registered. They go on the website, on the elections website, and check the status, because you can be purged from the list and you might not even know it. Now, with the election bill, that bill seeks really to even have a higher fine for the third party organization that do volunteer work in order to get you registered to vote. There used to be a fine of $50,000 if they fail to submit that information to the election department. Now, with the new bill, House Bill 7050, now the fine is at $250,000. Just think about some organizations who are providing volunteering services to get people registered to vote. if they don't submit that information on time, they have to be fined $250,000. So you, as citizens of the state of Florida, you are responsible as well to make sure you educate people that they have to request a vote by mail ballot for every single election now, not before it used to be for 3 consecutive elections. If you ask for it, you don't have to ask again. Now, every single election, we have to do that. And by putting such a hefty fine on those third-party organizations, of course, people are not going to want to do it. That's why I'm saying we all have an obligation to make sure that we do that. And there's so many other things in that bill as well. I want you to make sure you take some time to really look at it. Also, the immigration bill. That immigration bill, whether you're an immigrant or not, I think you really need to give it, sorry about that, my phone is ringing. You really need to look at this bill and see how it's going to impact you in the state of Florida. I would tell you one thing. I went to a market yesterday and it looked empty. And the owner was complaining that everybody had left. Most likely they had immigrants working at that grocery store. And if they are illegal, the law, the immigration law that passed, that the governor signed, basically, if you have 25 employees or more, what's the problem? Everybody else was talking, you they stopped them. So give me a few minutes.
I'm gonna give you a couple more minutes.
Give me a couple more minutes.
According to our agenda, we supposed to be on question and answer by 7:30. So
Okay.
I'm just want to make
All
sure
right.
we stay on time.
So if you have 25 employees or more, you have to connect to the E-Verify system. Okay? And that system is connected to ICE and immigration. If you have 1 or 2 employees, after 3 days, you hire those employees, you have to make sure you check their immigration status. And if you are an illegal immigrant, you go to the hospital, you have to disclose your status as well, which in people who are sick, they're not going to be seeking healthcare. And if they have some type of communicable disease, they would be able to pass it on to everybody else. So it's very important for us to know what's going on, to educate everyone. And it's a lot more in the bill, so please take time to read it. So thank you so much. I look forward to talking to you more.
Good evening. I'm State Representative Felicia Robinson, representing House District 104, which covers parts of Pembroke Pines, Miramar, and then I go into Dade County, so I have part of Miami Gardens. I'm going to sum it up like this in reference of time. This particular legislative session, this is my second legislative session, and I call it the wish list session. And basically, when I say that, it was a wish list, but it wasn't a wish list for the everyday Floridian. There are certain things that we need here in Florida, and some of my colleagues emphasize on it. We need property insurance relief. We need healthcare relief. And we didn't do any of that. So it was a wish list, but you should really ask yourself, a wish list for who? A lot of my colleagues shared a lot of good things, or some positive things. I'm not gonna say good, but some positive things. To add to that, I would say we did get a tax credit relief for diapers. That's gonna be permanent. I think that's a yay. That was Representative Escamani out of Orlando. And we had a couple of other good things. I had a whole lot of things I wanted to say, but I'm not gonna say it. But I would just tell you as Floridians, as you pay attention, I thank you all for coming, because that means that you are paying attention. I hope that you will go out and educate others. I believe when people know better, they'll do better. And I believe because we're in Tallahassee, a lot of times people do not pay attention, and so they don't know. So for those of you that are paying attention, it's your responsibility to take that back and make sure people know, so that when they get out here and they vote, they'll make sure that they're voting for people that's actually addressing the issues that we need to be addressed. What I always say when I'm talking to people is, and everybody here knows it, Florida's mine. It's mine. It's yours, it's ours. And when you own something, you have to make sure that you're willing to protect it, advocate, be engaged in it, fight for it, and do all those things. We're up there doing that for you all, but we do need your help. So pay attention to what's happening. And if it's not addressing the issues that hit our tables every day, then something needs to change.
Okay, I'm Mike Gottlieb. So I've got two bills on the governor's desk right now, so I don't want to talk about them, or how horrible he is and because they might get vetoed. But there was a terrible session in my silo, which was judiciary. But before we get to that, I'm just going to mention Florida's one of 10 states that does not have Medicaid expansion. And since we're at a school, I think it's appropriate that we talk about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the fact that the governor is reshaping our school system. Look at New College, which the students are in an uproar. They're protesting. They don't like their, the new regime there. And that could happen to any state college or college that accepts state funds. So I think we really need to be careful about who we're electing. And speaking of which, I think we all know that he announced for president today. So make sure you get out there and make your vote count. As it relates to the judicial silo, I'm chair of the Judiciary Committee in the House. And what we saw this year was more of the governor's games as it relates to, his social war in terms of we changed our death penalty scheme in the state of Florida from unanimous to 8-4. We now are the only state in the nation to have reinstated capital sexual battery. It's on the books in 6 different states, but it's not used because it was found over, I think, about 30 years ago to be cruel and unusual punishment under the Constitution. What we're seeing is an emboldened state legislature that, because of the Dobbs decision, thinks that these courts are going to continue to move to the right, but these are constitutional rights, the Eighth Amendment. I'm trying to go as quick as I can. And then in the civil arena, so those are the 2 things I'll talk about in the criminal arena. In the civil arena, we saw major giveaways to the National Chamber of Commerce and insurance companies by stopping plaintiffs' lawyers and plaintiffs' lawsuits from being able to assert rights against businesses and against insurance companies. So I know we're trying to move the agenda along, so that's just what I'll talk about there. And as always, I'm available if you have any questions or concerns.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to also tell you, if you are a union member, we passed a very awful bill there too, that I kind of wanted to, well, they passed, yes, they passed.
We have touched on everything that we have on this agenda, and I want to say thanks to the members for actually being able to let the public understand how we are actually working together for the people. I had the privilege of passing 891, which is year-round schools for our school students. At this particular time, only 53% of our children read on grade level. So if we continue to do the same thing that we have done in the past and expecting something different, we're the one that has the problem. So if we can offer additional services for our children that need additional help, year-round school is one of the things that I came up with, thinking outside the box. At this particular time, I want to give, I want to say a brief privilege of pleasure, personal welcome to Nikki Freed. She's in the audience. We're going to open it up and have everyone, if you have any questions, come up.
And a former Broward resident, I believe.
And in the past chair of Broward Days.
Hi. Well, first of all, I will not take a lot of time. You did not come here to hear from me. You here to come talk to them. I just want to say thank you. Thank you to this delegation and to our Democrats across the entire state, because what they did this legislative session, they got up every single day fighting for the people of our state, knowing that every day they were going to have the most emotional conversations on the floor in their committee meetings. They had to know that every single day they were going to have these speeches and their colleagues still vote against them. And they again went up the next day and did it all over again. And so a huge round of applause for what you guys have been able to do and representing Broward and Miami and all people in our state. But it's my job to give them backup. And that's where you all come into play. And there's going to be a lot more conversations in the next, few months to make sure that Broward is ready for 2024, to make sure that we're doing everything possible to be registering voters, to be organizing on the ground, to be doing year-round, talking to our constituents and to our voters, and to make sure that if you are, there's a whole bunch of you in this room, if you want to run for office, if you're inspired by this moment, please consider running for office. We need great candidates up and down the ballot. We need to make sure that we are truly representing the values of the people of our state, which aren't just democratic values. These are human values. These are people values. There's a lot of real big issues on the table, and unfortunately, we didn't get a chance this legislative session to actually put forth the people's agenda. We put forth Ron DeSantis's agenda, and today was a complete failure to launch, and we are very excited about that. But really, truly, I appreciate you all being here, and I cannot thank you truly all enough for what you did this legislative session, and thank you for all the hard work that you put in. I will always be here. I think a whole majority of you know how to find me. If not, there's a lot of other people in the room that do know how to find me. People have my phone numbers. Feel free to email, call. This is a team. This is one Florida, one dream, one team, and we're going to do this together. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have anyone here from the Republican Party, Florida Republican Party, that would like to speak?
Good evening, everyone. It's
I knew it, Luby.
Good evening, Broward Delegation. Such an honor to be here, to also join in the chorus of a big thank you to our Broward Strong Delegation. I just finished coming from the hospital board and actually giving you all the kudos that you well deserve for supporting us. I just reported our legislative priorities to our board, and on their behalf, on behalf of our CEO, we say thank you for your support. I know that each and every one of you love Memorial, and I have to say, just in healthcare, we did have a very better year. Finally, after 3 years, Memorial received in terms of GME and the pediatric adjusters for those level 3s and 4s, almost $9 million. Both our projects for opioid assistance for mothers who are pregnant, who are addicted to opioids, will be receiving $1 million. And I want to thank some of our Broward sponsors for that. Our great Senator Lauren Book, who is the senator who continuously always supports that project in the budget. And also Representative Fabricio is the House sponsor on that. Also, for the first time in the history of the state budget, Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital, I have such a sense of pride, is actually listed as a project, but it is a project that I know is very dear to you, which will provide assistance, new solutions for children that have anxiety, depression, and obviously we all know that we're experiencing high levels of suicide. So we're hoping that that new project for the first time will begin to help pediatric patients that are undergoing this. During the pandemic, we had to change adult beds to pediatric beds. Children were really the victims of this pandemic. Let us never forget. We see what continues to happen in behavioral health in children. And I would also like to thank Senator Pizzo and Representative Woodson. For the first time, the city of Hollywood and Memorial have a joint legislative priority, the C-100 bridge along Johnson Street, that will provide the widening of that bridge so that we can have EMS vehicles really are able to travel there faster and save lives as patients are transported to Memorial. So thank you, Senator Pizzo. Thank you, Representative Woodson. And on our behalf, we will be inviting you before we start again in the fall. In just over 100 days, this process begins again, to Memorial for a legislative meeting. And we hope that we also have an opportunity to say thank you to you all. And on a personal level, I know the sacrifice that each and every one of you make to be there 9 weeks out of your life and your families to serve the people of the great state of Florida. So thank you for your sacrifice. And I do believe that you should take some time off before we start again. Thank you on behalf of Memorial. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we'll take any questions from the audience.
Good evening, legislators. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jason Krushka. First, I just want to thank you for your service in Tallahassee. We all know that as Democrats, it's almost impossible to get anything done up there. And for every achievement that you guys did, you should be celebrated for it. So good job. However, I did want to follow up on what Representative Gottlieb mentioned, the 2 death penalty bills. I wanted to say I was very disappointed that the legislative delegation did not present a united front against these 2 horrible bills. I'm a former criminal defense attorney. I was a public defender for 6 years. I did death penalty litigation for 2 years. I worked at the Innocence Project for 3 years. These two bills are going to lead to more innocent people being put on death row and more innocent people being put to death. Florida is the worst state in the country in terms of death penalty. We have more people that were exonerated off of death row than any state in the country. And so for the legislators on the panel who voted against these bills, thank you very much. The ones who voted for it, I would just want to know your perspective as to
Sure.
why you voted for it.
So I'll take it first.
Okay.
Jason, thank you. And I appreciate your position on it, especially with your experience. I too have experience in this realm, unfortunately. I started the gun violence division as a prosecutor in Miami-Dade County, where principally I was the lead investigator for all the shootings and homicides of children, all those under 18. And I could go through hundreds of cases and files that I had. I could also rattle off to you the number of cases I dropped that were shooting cases because they involved 15 and 16-year-old boys who were in incredibly horrible circumstances and situations that I in good faith could not move forward because I would have done the exact same thing as a 15 or 16-year-old. And I think of the top 100 shootings and homicide cases I handled, and I was prolific. I had 52 cases to verdict within 18 months. I was picking juries while juries were deliberating. Of the 100 sampling of shooters and homicides that I had, I could think of maybe one person that I think would ever touch it and abuse a child. Of the 100 cases that I'm familiar with from my former office, including one of sodomy from an older man to his granddaughters, every one of them would have pulled the trigger. The pulling of a trigger is a split-second decision. Very often there's immediate remorse. The continued pattern of abuse, of kidnapping and shackling a child and starving them while you continue to sodomize them, is the reason why my criminal procedure professor in college said, you're going to learn two distinct differences. There are those who don't deserve to live, and there are those who deserve to die, and they are not the same. And I will tell you that it is a depravity in the torture of a child who is pleading and begging for mercy that is far worse in the circumstances. And I've seen the chests of 7-year-olds blown open, their heads blown off. Surfside was my district where I watched body parts being peeled off and had body parts released for funeral services. So on this, I'll probably disagree with the majority. But if you want to know the sickest of the sickest, and I wish everybody well, and I wish every single defendant that was ever sentenced off, I wish them well and shook their hand because they thought that I was fair. But there is no rehabilitation for somebody who tortures a child. There is no drunkenness, there is no stonedness, there is no situation or circumstance in the most severe, in a light most favorable to defendant, that should ever have an adult look at a child and wish to harm them and wish to molest them. And so if I go alone in that position, I'm fine to take the criticism, but it's where I am.
And you're not alone in your position, and I'm not going to reiterate your comments, but I'm also a former assistant state attorney. I actually also worked for the Florida Innocence Project and still sponsor the Florida Innocence Project through my law firm as we sit here today. Why I was a yes on both of those, in addition to what he said, what Senator Pizzo said, is when you look at the issues with our criminal justice system, our issues stem well before we get to 12-0. So what these bills kept in place is it still requires a unanimous verdict of guilt. It still requires a 12-0 unanimous verdict of guilt. It still requires a 12-0 unanimous verdict for aggravating factors. The only change comes into play when we get to the 8-4 position. And the issues with our criminal justice system start before we get to 12-0. They start in ensuring that our police are properly trained and that we are constantly providing therapy to make sure that any biases that they might have going into the job don't actually then result in wrongful arrest, making sure that the evidence collected is preserved in a manner, making sure that our assistant state attorneys and our public defenders' offices are fully funded so they can keep good talent, so they're not constantly retraining new state attorneys and public defenders, because that's when the criminal justice system fails. It fails with our police training, it fails with our evidence collection, and it fails when we don't fully fund those two departments to make sure that the prosecutors keep good talent So they're not, they know the signs, they know what to look for. I've given defendants' brothers immunity because I didn't believe my police officer, because I knew they arrested the wrong guy. So when you talk to me about reasonable doubt, I've had to prove it and I know what that looks like. So where our issues with the criminal justice come from start before we get to 12-0. And that's what we need to focus our reforms on to make sure we don't have people wrongfully convicted and sentenced to death at 8-4. So that's why I'm a yes for the same reasons when it comes to sexual predators. There is no rehabilitation. There is no fixing them. And there are some people that commit crimes that as a result deserve the ultimate penalty. And in this country, that's death. So that is why I was a no, why I supported both of those
And
pieces.
Jason, I did something you can ask Carlos Martinez, the public defender of Miami. I probably started 75, 80 trials. And I'll tell you this, I asked every single one of the defense attorneys in every one of my cases since I was in misdemeanor court, is your client innocent? Only 2 times. Stan Maslona and Diana Karamis said, Piz, I know it doesn't look good, but my guys are innocent. And I dropped both cases. I've asked every single defense attorney, is your client innocent? For my own conscience. Because I had cases where I went to Arthur hearings, held someone without bond, and then later dismissed the case because I knew someone was lying. I asked every single one of my defense attorneys if their clients were innocent. Only twice did I ever hear a yes.
Do we have another question? And as that person comes up to the mic, we're gonna allow Senator Book to introduce herself.
Thank you, guys. How are you? Senator Book, Senate District 35. I apologize for my tardiness. We were at the Women's Federation event in Broward County and then hustled our dupas over here. And I'm accompanied by 2 tiny legislative aides, Kennedy and Hudson, who are 6, and very eager to get to the Panthers game, but very excited to be here, watching it at home.
Hello, my name is Monica Elliott. I'm co-president of the League of Women Voters here in Broward County. Don't really have a question, but I just wanted to let you know SB 7050 was signed today.
Yep.
Minutes, literally minutes after that was signed, we filed a lawsuit. Because what they're doing to third-party voter registration organizations is just unconscionable. And I don't know if everybody realizes it's going to affect the parties also.
Yep.
Because if you're going to register a voter, take that piece of paper. You've got to prove you're a US citizen and you have to prove you have not been convicted of a whole host of felonies.
Miss Elliott, I have good news. As someone who has personally sued the governor last year on the immigration bill, you can win in court.
We are
Force a special session.
We are certainly hoping, but I mean, literally within minutes, I was on the phone call. We were with the lawyers.
Thank you.
We cut it off and they immediately filed it.
Thank you.
So,
Thank
but thank you for your support.
Anyone else?
Hi, hello. My name is Anthony Grullon. I'm the past president of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, the Gamma Alpha Delta chapter. And the reason that I mentioned that is because, as we know, the DEI organizations all across campuses are facing high adversity right now. So I go to NOAA Southeastern University. So really, as a private institution, we're not going to see the effects of this as much as public institutions will. So really, I'm up here asking on behalf of my brothers of the organization that go to public institutions that will see this effect, what can we do to assist them? We've tried to put on events, but in terms of interest from other Greeks on our campus, we weren't seeing that. So what is something that we can do to prevent this from having any terrible effects?
Who wants to take it? How old are you? How old are you?
21.
Okay. Would you mind saying up there? Okay, dude, you're engaged. You're a handsome dude. What bothers you? What bothers you the most about it?
That what our organization, and this is my line brother right here, Jabari Newton.
Jabari, you're not getting out of this. Come on up, man. Hold on, Jabari. I'll videotape you while you're up there. Come on, man. Can I tell you honestly, and I know Chair Freed would agree, and a lot of people in the audience, you guys are miles ahead of everybody your age right now. That you're engaged and you're here. Thank you. I have two identical twin 16-year-old boys, and they bury themselves in phones and then on their own issues. And I push them to be more civically engaged. But the fact that you're up here leads me to believe that there's groups of people who worked their butts off to get to a particular place, and now we're going backwards. And it feels like we're going backwards. And you may feel like you owe it to an older generation that had to put up with a lot of stuff, and that we're going backwards to that. And you'd be absolutely right. The good news is the 800-pound gorilla had an announcement today, and I think a lot of our Republican colleagues are happy that he's out of the way, so we get the autonomy back of the legislature that we get to do. But I will tell you this, and I know Chair Fried again would agree, colleges are not engaged the way they used to be. College students are not engaged the way they used to be. When Doc Osgood was talking about social media, you guys don't handwrite letters anymore. You don't engage with your neighbors. You don't know who your neighbors are. And everyone in this audience that's over 40 could knock on their neighbor's door growing up and eat at their house. I don't know that you kids can do that today at all. And so it's just starting with one, it's starting with two. But document it, record it, be pissed off. It's okay. And you guys are going to be here a lot longer than any of the whims and wishes of any particular individual are. But again, I know maybe the bar is lower than it used to be, but really freaking cool that you guys are here.
Thank you.
Can we get together after we connect afterwards?
Yeah, of course.
All right, and then we're happy to show up. Everybody here will come show up wherever you want us to show up to Campbell.
Yeah.
Rep?
So what I would add to that, you asked, what is it you can do? So as a member of Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity, one of the things that we know in the Greek life is that we have alumni chapters, and alumni chapters help guide that and facilitate that. So what I would say is, one thing is to get other brothers in your chapters, other brothers at other schools. You guys plan it out, talk it up with your alumni chapters. Have them come on board and bring on the national organization, so that you guys get a big coalition of big support. A lot of the older brothers are in their own careers, and they bring special abilities to how to get around certain situations and their life situations. And so I would say lean on that and cultivate that motion, so that you guys know where you're targeting and how to get the message across, and talk to the board of directors of schools and let them know that you're here and these are your concerns, and let them know what you want to see them stand up for you to do.
So I'm a president of Alpha Kappa Alpha. We have 5 chapters in Broward County. And it's a very difficult conversation, because a lot of what we do in Greek life, people from the outside don't know our documents. So the first thing I would say is make sure you know your documents on the local and international level. And talking to 3 different HBCU presidents, they told me that on their campuses, Greek organizations are self-funded through their own dues and different things, so they don't get state money. So I don't want you to be afraid. We know that Black Greek organizations are led by college-educated Black people, and we're not broke. Alpha Kappa Alpha this year launched the first ever Black women female-owned credit union. Okay, I could go on with all of the Divine Nine. And when the Divine Nine get together, we make history, because we have the first Black female vice president of the United States of America. So when we get legislation, we have to read it. Then we have to talk to those that are in charge. And I'm saying that literally, because a lot of times what happens is stuff just come out in the media, or somebody put out something, and it's not actually what the bill says. And then when you sit next to people on the other side and people are speaking stuff that's not actually in the bill, it becomes a running joke to them. And sometimes they can be very, very insulting. So just know that the Greek organizations was founded for various reasons. I can take case, I'm probably not supposed to know this, but I'm a proud mom of a Nuke. And it was founded in Indiana University because they wouldn't let Black men wear the school colors. I can go on and talk about the work of Alpha Kappa Alpha and Delta Sigma Theta as it relates to Black women being in college and so on and so on. So it's from that strong lineage that we have our roots. So there's no way that we're going to come to 2023 and allow anybody to set us back. When we have our backs against the wall, it's when you see us start in post-Reconstruction, historically Black colleges. It's when you see Black Wall Street. I could just go on and on. So I am burdened right now because I'm seeing a lot of young people. I spend a lot of time with young people because I'm a millennial born in the wrong generation. I'm seeing them having a lot of anxiety and fear and trepidation, and they should be concerned about the time that we lived in. But just know something that is so dear to us and the sacrifices we made to be a part of these organizations. We're not going to let anybody shut us down. If we have to, we can fund whatever we need to fund because we're not broke. Many of us in grad chapters spend a lot of money investing in the Greek organization so that we don't have to worry about that.
Robinson?
So what I would like to say is one of the, you started doing what it is you can do. I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated. And I would tell you that one of the things that we've been doing, actually last night I was on a Zoom call and we had several young people there actually talking about SB 266 and other pieces of legislation. So you're starting off correctly because you're here and you're engaged. What I would encourage you to do is to continue to do this and pull in more of your peers, because this is going to affect you all longer than it's going to affect us. And it is law now because I think it has been signed into law, but you can change that when we get more people in and we have the numbers to change the law. Laws are changes all the time. So what I would say is to continue to be engaged, understand the process, and then encourage your peers to come along with you, because they'll listen to you all probably before they'll listen to us. But anytime we have the opportunity to speak to young people, we're game. And so the more of you all that get involved, then the better you're going to be. So I would say start there.
I just want to say, I'm not in a Greek organization, but I want to speak about your generation. The majority of you register to vote at the DMV when you get your driver's license. You usually are not identifying with a party. Your age group has a lot of independent voters and a lot of people who don't align with one party or the other. I can tell you, when I spent the summer knocking on doors, I met people and they didn't know what to think or what to do and who was looking out for their rights and who wasn't. I met a 19-year-old who said to me, well, I like guns, so I guess I'm Republican. And I was like, what? And it was funny because he had just pulled up in his car with loud music and that bill passed. It's a way to profile people when you have loud music, right? So I think what you all need to do, because not us, because I'm 50 and well, Dr. Osgood, she's in the other generation, I am not, is that you have to get your youth involved because the turnout in Broward County here was terrible. People did not come out and vote. We lost seats in Miami-Dade. We lost seats in Palm Beach. We lost Hillsborough, around the state. We lost seats because your generation and all of us together, we didn't come out to vote. We sat around. And so if we don't get voter turnout, there's not going to be that change. And you need to make sure that people know who represents them and they go and vote on election day.
Young man, I want to say I'm very proud of you speaking up today. This is a good start.
You too,
You should.
Kayla.
Absolutely. This is a start, and you need to make sure that the ones that's working with you continue to do so and be on the same page. Thank you.
Anthony Jabari, the tall young woman standing behind you is going to give you our contact information.
Get their digits.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions?
Hi, I'm Rebecca Thompson. I'm very loud without this. My name is Rebecca Thompson. I'm actually the president of the Young Democrats. So first, I want to thank you guys all from the bottom of my heart. I know this session impacted you mentally, physically, and probably everything else. I kind of want to put their question back on you guys, because what we hear a lot from young people is that they try to get involved and they get shut down. They try to run, the party says, wait your turn, it's not your time. So how are you guys going to help us build a bench and help pave the way for future Democrats?
Nikki's gonna come up. While she's walking up, let me say this. I tried for several years to get Narcan to be placed in schools because kids overdose. It's reported as respiratory or cardiac, but it's really an overdose. And a lot of us don't have pride of authorship up here. So it took a Republican. This session was my 18th bill that has passed a different year under a Republican's name. And if you're okay with that, you can get a lot done. I've gotten 18 bills passed that were verbatim the same language. That bill was brought to me by 3 16-year-old high school kids in Miami-Dade County, saying that there are 14 overdoses at Miami Beach Senior High. Senator, will you please read this letter? I said, I'll do you one better. I filed a bill about it, right? I call it out all the time. The best ideas come from those who are not influenced by lobbyists, by campaign donations, by whatever the zeitgeist is or whoever their supreme leader is, but really what's in their heart. And so those cleanest, freshest ideas come from that young Democrats, young Republican, whatever. I mean, honestly, there's so much that we can do, 81.5% that we can do, but Chair Fried might have.
As she comes up, I want everybody to understand that the Broward Delegation Office is nonpartisan. So that if we have anyone else in the audience that would like to come up and give her encouraging words or additional information, please feel free to do so.
So I just want to say, and also not just to you, but to Jeff,
you are absolutely correct that too often you're seeing people not getting encouraged to not only run for office, but also to get engaged in the party apparatuses. And so, as I said earlier, and you've heard me speak about this as well, is that this is going to be a new day, at least in the Democratic Party. We've already created a youth council, which you might be on, which has about 35 to 40 young Dems, high school Dems, college Dems, and those organizing groups on around our state. Congressman Frost is the advisor to this council. And so this is an opportunity to, one, get everybody more engaged. We are going to be hiring a statewide youth coordinator, including to my Greek, including one directly responsible for Greek life. That's to make sure, because you're absolutely correct on the Divine Nine. What Divine Nine can do together collectively is incredible, but it's also the NPHC, IFC, MGHC chapters as well. We also are going to make sure we have fellowship programs and throughout the entire party. 35 fellows, 10 for fall, 10 for spring, 5 for summer, for that exact purpose. And I will be announcing my committee positions, more committee positions in the next 24 hours, which are filled with young Dems all over my committees, to make sure that we're already engaging them today, because we right now in the state of Florida have the largest student population outside of California. And if our students on our campuses from colleges to universities get engaged and register to vote and be active, the day is so different. And so thank you for your involvement here in Broward County, and know that I see you and I see all of our young Dems in our audience, and we are going to be a very different party going forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for what you do in Broward County with our younger generation. I would tell every young person, don't ever let anyone tell you that you have to wait for your turn or it's not your turn. I myself, when I was running, some people told me I needed to wait. And I would not listen to anybody because I knew what I was getting into. So every young person, if that's what you want, you try to connect with the right people. The only thing I would tell you, there's no money in this. You have to remember that. Make sure you save some money because you are going to need the money, but don't let no one tell you to wait for your turn or you cannot do this. If it's something you feel like you know you want to do, connect with the young people, talk to them, because we need fresh mind as well as old mind with wisdom. Thank you.
Robinson, and she will be the last speaker.
And what I would want to say is, at least my office, and this is just my second term, but we're always open, and I invite all young people to work with my office. So I've had, I think, probably now at least about a good 6 or 7 interns. And when they come into the office, they have access to everything. You know, we listen to their ideas, we push some of their projects. And to me, that's a learning, a part of actually being engaged, but actually learning the process and getting their start so that, hey, that is to me how I build my bench.
I want to say thank you very much for joining us this evening. And we look forward to continuing to work on your behalf, and we look forward to continue to partner with you. Thank you for joining us.